Hello and welcome to the Inventory Pro tutorial on how to set it up with UFPS and UFPS multiplayer. So I've got a Inventory Pro tutorial folder here. I'm just going to copy the 8-point all done scene. Actually, that would be a lot easier. So I'm just going to Control D, which duplicates the scene, and drag it into my Inventory Pro tutorials folder. Alright. First what we have to do is go to Tools, Inventory Pro, and then go to the Integrations, which will give us the integrations overview, and here we can enable the UFPS integration, and if you have multiplayer, also tick the UFPS multiplayer box. This will recompile Unity. It takes a few seconds. Once it's done, it will reload. So now we go to our third-person controller. We can't actually use this one. This one comes from the standard assets. We could probably make this work with UFPS, but it's a lot easier to just grab the UFPS player instead of the third-person controller. So I'm just going to delete this one, and I'm going to go to the UFPS folder. And in the base content, we have the prefabs folder. In here, we'll find the players, and there's the hero and hero HD weapons. They're both essentially the same, but they just have a different set of weapons. So for this, I'll just use the HD. Just drag it into your scene. All right. As you can see, I already have the VP. No. Okay, so once you've got it in your scene, we need to add a few components to make this work with Inventory Pro. So the first thing we're going to do is go to Inventory System, Integrations, UFPS, and then we'll have the Inventory UFPS input controller, and that's all we need for now. So once we add it, you'll see that we have two required fields. It's the input, which is right on the object itself, and we have the crosshair, which is also here. So we can hide the crosshair once we go into the interface, so it doesn't overlap with anything. We can close windows when we click on the world. So if we open the open a UI window, it will freeze the input controller from UFPS, and once we click on the world, so anywhere else than a UI element, we'll close the windows and go back into the first person mode. And the hide cursor on no blocking windows hides the cursor the moment we close a UI window. So once we go into the UI, we get our cursor, and the moment we hide it again, the cursor will hide, so we don't have a cursor and a crosshair at the same time. Alright, so a thing I actually forgot to mention is that on our Aero HD weapons, we've added the UFPS input controller, but we actually have to add the inventory player as well, which is the main component that will keep track of all the items from the player and so forth. So we have to associate those with our player and set all of the inventories. Alright, so once we've done that, as you can see here, we've got a green button, Add Helper, which is the a helper component that makes sure that all objects in range can be picked up. We actually need to add that. Alright, so because this demo scene already has a database for all the items, and I don't want to mix through all the items, I'm just going to duplicate the database that we already had and reset it so we can add our new items. So in our demos, we have assets and databases, and in there is our item database. So I'm just going to duplicate this and drag it into our UFPS demos folder. So now essentially we've just duplicated the database that we have here with reference to all of the items. And as you can see here in the inspector, it's just serialized as a regular object. So if I just take my items and I say size equals 0, we basically remove all the items, but we still have the rarities, the categories, properties, and so forth. So we don't have to recreate all of those. I'll just rename the database. And we of course have to relink it to our managers object. So we currently have the old database set, so we'll just drag in the new one so we can use that one. And I'll also quickly get rid of the items that were already in the scene so we can have a fresh start. Alright, so if we go to Tools, Inventory Pro, Main Editor, we'll now have the new database right here. And as you can see, we still have all of our categories, properties, currencies, but all our items are essentially gone, so we can actually create a couple of new ones. Okay, so once creating a... Alright, so once we create a new item, you'll see that we have a couple of new types here. So if I type in UFPS, we have the unit type, which is used for all ammunition. So we have unit type, which is used for all ammunition. We have the inventory item base, is actually the one you don't want to use. It's a base class for mainly code purposes. And we have the equipable, which is good for, well, equipable items, guns, maces, knives, all that. So let's start by creating an equipable item. And we actually want to select no model here because the model is already inside of the UFPS item. So we'll use no model here, and then we grab the model from the UFPS item itself. Okay, so as you can see, the name and description are grayed out here. That's because below we have use UFPS item data enabled. And what this does is grab the information from the UFPS object itself, so we don't have duplicate values. So we can take a pistol here, for example, and once we do that, it will grab the name, such as pistol, from this item type that we just selected. We can just grab a equip sound. Equip visual is actually something we want to disable because we use the UFPS system and not the Inventory Pro system. We can have properties, rarities, categories, just like any other Inventory Pro item. So let's create another UFPS item and let's grab the unit type. Again, we don't want to select a model. No visual item equipment. We want to use the UFPS item data, and we can grab the unit type, which is, in this case, let's go with bullets. The unit amount is the amount of bullets we'll get in this specific object. So this could be a clip of bullets, and so you'll get 7 bullets once you pick up this object. Let's just leave that blank for now. We can add them directly to the weapon, which will bypass the inventory. So if you already have the weapon equipped, it will directly add them to the UFPS inventory item, and they'll never show up in your inventory. If we disable this, they will get in your inventory, and you can equip them like any other object. So this is likely, you likely want to disable this. Alright, so let's click the little I, which was selected in our project browser. I'm just going to drag this in. And the pistol as well. Alright, so I'm just going to close this and see how far we've gotten. Right, so here are the items, and we can't really pick them up, we can't do anything with it. What we actually have to do is set up the FPS system, so we can actually raycast from the camera and to see what objects we can pick up. So if we go to settings and use pickup and usage, you'll see that we have item trigger mouse click. So once we click on an item, should it be picked up or attempted to be picked up? So in this case, we don't actually want to do that because that would be the same as firing. We have the trigger handler type, and we can actually use raycast from camera and find best in range. And so the raycast from camera will draw a ray from the center of the camera and see what object we're currently hovering. So that's actually what we want to do. And the best in range is great for a third-person game, so you can actually find the most likely item you want to pick up near a certain area. So in this case, let's just use the raycast from camera. and we can set up a key code that we want to use once we were to press. So once we press F, we want to pick up the object that's in the center of the camera that we're actually looking at. We can add collision to pick up things like gold. So we'll pick up gold even if item trigger and player collision. So this is triggered once we hit the object, walk against it. We'll actually pick it up. We can also pick up trigger gold even when this one's disabled. So gold will always be picked up. But let's just leave it on as this for now. What we have to do next is actually create a UI element that can display the first person triggering process. So once we look at this object and it's in the center of the camera, once we press F, we want to pick up this item, but we actually want to show this to the user. And for that, we actually have to create a new UI element. Just gonna go here. And I'm just going to position this in the center of the screen. Something like 50 by 50. Well, let's just leave it here. I'm just going to disable this image, and what we want to do is add a object trigger FPS UI. So this will show the triggering process for items using first person controls. So we can actually set an image, and we can set a text, the button that's actually need to be pressed. So if we create a new UI element and make a text object, let's make this 40 by 40, position it on the right half. Something like this. And then on the other side, we actually want to create an image. That will be the actual icon that we can press. So I'm just gonna make this a little smaller. Okay. We can actually configure what icon we want to use inside of our settings. So these are for the cursors, and then here we have for the object trigger FPS pickup sprite. So we have the icon hand, which comes from the default UI visuals. You can obviously put any icon in here, and this icon will then be used inside of this UI element. So let's just make this, 30 by 30 is fine. So this is what we'll see, and it will automatically swap out the F for the key code that you're going to use. It's just a way to easily design it. Okay, so we set this up. Let's give it this a name. And because it's a UI window, we can give it any form of animation like fading in, fading out, whatever you like. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at this. So we actually have to reference the two objects we created so we can actually repaint them. And we're just going to need to assign this inside of our managers. And that's about it. So let's just try it out. Okay, so I can pick them up. I actually forgot to assign the icons, so let me just really quickly go back here. Select the pistol, and we actually want to select the icon for the UI. I don't actually have any gun icons, so I'll just use this sword for now. It look a little silly, but so be it. No ring for the ammunition. Right, so as you can see here, we can now press F to pick up the item, and it will be stored inside of our inventory. The cursor is still visible. We'll fix that in a second. We've actually added a unit type of 7, so we get 7 rings, or 7 bullets. It's because inside of our bullet, we said we want 7 bullets. but our stack size is still set to 1, so it's going to split that up into 7 separate slots. So you probably want to set the maximum stack size for the amount of bullets, or just go with 999 to store all of those bullets on a stack. Alright, so let's try that again. And it adds them all in a single stack. As you can see, once I open the inventory, my cursor is still locked and I can't do anything. We can actually fix this by going to the specific window. So for example, when we open the inventory UI window, we want to make sure that the UFPS input is blocked. So on each window, there's a UI window or UI window interactive. And on it is a element called block UFPS input. Once you enable this, once the windows are shown, the UFPS input will be blocked, and sorry, you'll be able to use your cursor again. So we want to do this for all the major windows that should block the input. So we, for example, have the bank, it should block it. This is actually a component custom element. The character window should block UFPS input. Crafting windows. The vendor. This sidebar doesn't, the info box doesn't either, because it's the tooltip. Context menu doesn't have to block anything. The dialogues obviously should. Alright, so I think that's all of them. Yep. And let's try that now. Alright, so as you can see, I can now pick up the items. So as you can see now, once I press I, my inventory window will show. I can use the items as usual, I can drag elements around and my cursor is unlocked. Once I press I again, I'll go back into FPS mode and such. Once I click in the world, I'll go back into UFPS and the windows will be hidden. The thing we still have to do is, once we start the game using UFPS, the Hero HD will start with a couple of items. As you can see here, we start with the pistol and a knife. We actually have to clear this and we have to add them through Inventory Pro, because the items actually wrap around the UFPS items. So we can't start with items inside of the VP player inventory, it has to be empty. So now there's no items, I can pick these up, equip them. As you can see, it gets added. I can add the bullets, or actually, alright, so the pistol and the bullets are still equipped to the same position. So once I try to equip a pistol and after that the bullets, it will actually unequip the pistol because it's in the same slot. So we can actually move this pistol. Let's just create a new equipment type. So let's just make this pistols and create a new one for ammo. Alright, so the pistol is obviously going to equip to pistols and the ammo to ammo. Now we actually have to add it to the character UI, so we can actually say what slot is allowed to keep what type. So if we go to the character window, you can see that we have a set of slots. So we want to be able to keep the inside of the element with the icon shield, we'll just say that we allow to equip ammunition, and the one next to it can equip weapons, pistols. Alright, so now we can equip the items here. Let's just try it out. Once I walk over, press F, I can pick up the items, and once I right click them, I can equip. Now my ring doesn't currently equip, and that's because the canvas. Here we have the character UI, and it's got a set of filters of types that are allowed to be equipped inside of the character UI window. And as you can see, we have equipable, we've got one for Ply Game, we have the UFPS equipable item, but the UFPS unit type has not been attached, so we actually need to add the UFPS unit type. In case it's not been added here. If you can already equip it, that's fine, but if it's not in, you need to make sure it's inside of these filters. So make sure you do that. So once we've got that, we can pick up the items, equip them to our character, and equip the ammunition. Alright, that's it for this tutorial. Thank you for watching, and until next time.